How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another video. If you're new to my channel, my name is Max, and for the past 2 years I have been building out my Toyota Sequoia into an overlanding vehicle and documenting the entire build on YouTube. I've taken it around Oregon on a bunch of truck camping adventures. It's been so much fun, and recently started a new series which I'm calling Overland Guide, with the purpose of kind of helping you guys get out and experience your own adventures, go on your own overlanding trips. I just finished up filming part 1. That video dropped a couple weeks ago, and it was all about overlanding and what it is, and I talked a little bit about some things that make a good overlanding vehicle. Now today we're moving on to part 2, and I'm very excited for this one because this is something I struggled with a lot when I was first trying to pick a vehicle for overlanding. And today's topic is going to be discussing the differences between trucks and SUVs, and the goal is to hopefully help you guys figure out which vehicle might be a better choice for you guys. So let's go ahead and get started with today's video: trucks versus SUVs for overlanding. My plan for today is to kind of discuss trucks and the pros and cons and talk a little bit about them, and then talk more about SUVs and the pros and cons for them, and hopefully just give you guys a bunch of information that makes it a little bit easier to figure out which vehicle might be a better fit for you. I've never personally owned a truck for overlanding, but I have a bunch of friends who have trucks over SUVs, so I feel like I know enough about them to kind of discuss the differences. We're gonna get started today talking about trucks and reviewing some of the pros and cons, and just talk about using trucks for overlanding. Trucks are very popular for overlanding because from the factory they usually come with a lot of ground clearance. You usually have the option to get them in 4-wheel drive, and if you watched the first video, ground clearance and 4-wheel drive were two of the biggest topics that I discussed when you're looking to pick a vehicle for overlanding. So the fact that trucks come with two of these things pretty much from the factory is a big part of why so many people pick trucks to use as their vehicles for overlanding. For off-roading and overlanding, it's great to have a lot of ground clearance. You don't always know what the trail is going to look like, and having the ground clearance just makes it a little bit safer in case there are some rocks or bigger obstacles that you're needing to get through to get to a destination where you might want to camp. So 4-wheel drive, ground clearance, those are two of the immediate pros to picking a truck for overlanding. Now my third point, and this is probably the biggest reason why you might want to pick a truck for overlanding, and this might sound obvious, but just having the truck bed. With the truck bed, there is so much potential for overlanding. You have the ability to sleep in the back, you have the ability to put a canopy on it, you can build overlanding drawers in the back of your truck bed, you also can put a big truck camper on the back. Having a truck bed is easily one of the best parts and one of the biggest reasons why you might want to choose a truck for overlanding, just because there are so many opportunities and so much potential with all of that space in the back. One thing with truck beds that I'm personally jealous about, if you do any type of outdoor activities, say paddleboarding, kayaking, mountain biking, skiing, anything like that, it makes it so easy to just throw your gear in the back and not worry about things getting wet or dirty. With the Sequoia, I do have a lot of interior space, but it's not as easy to throw skis or a mountain bike or any of that in the back. While I can do that, of course, I just don't like to do as much because it feels like you're getting it dirty, whereas with a truck bed, it feels like it doesn't really matter as much. The truck bed is designed to take dirtier items, and it would be really nice to take some of this outdoor equipment you have and just throw it in the back. So that's one thing I wish I had. That's one thing I love about trucks, is just the ability to throw any of your outdoor gear in the back really easily and not worry about things getting dirty. Now additionally, if you are ever looking to haul appliances or any type of bigger objects, it is a lot easier to do that with a truck. And I know this isn't overlanding specific necessarily, but that's just one of the other parts that you might want to think about. If you're looking to pick a truck for overlanding, now you also have a perfect vehicle for moving as well. Another thing about owning a truck, and this really depends on your personal needs and your personal goals, but you have the ability to throw a truck camper on there. Now with overlanding, there are so many different ways that you can do it. There are so many different vehicles you can use, so many different ways you can sleep when you're out overlanding, whether that's in the back of your SUV, just in the back of your truck bed, in a ground tent, in a rooftop tent, or in a truck camper. And the truck camper is something that I really wish I had the ability to throw on the back of the Sequoia, because it just has so much more space. There are so many different types of truck campers these days too, whether it's a traditional truck camper or a camper with a pop-up tent, or even the super light GFC style, which are kind of like a pop-up tent built into a truck camper. There are so many of these available for trucks, and just something that I never have the ability to do with my Sequoia because it is an SUV. I would say truck campers are great for certain things. They make it a lot easier to do longer day trips because you can kind of live in them more. There's a lot more space. They feel a lot more like home. Lots of times they have heating and cooling, things like ovens, microwaves. This all depends on the truck camper that you go with. But I would say it is set up more for longer overlanding trips and just more for the ability to kind of like live out of your vehicle on some of these off-road adventures. Obviously you can still do longer trips with an SUV, but you just kind of don't have that nice homey and just space to kind of hang out and relax. That's all inside and protected. So that's one reason why sometimes I really wish I had a truck, was just for that ability to throw a truck camper on there, because it does sound really nice for some of those longer trips to kind of have your vehicle be more like a home that you can live out of. Now, of course, with a truck camper, there are a whole bunch of cons as well. It's a lot of weight on the back of your vehicle. You can get decreased gas mileage. It doesn't make it as great for daily driving around the city. The truck becomes super tall if you don't have kind of a pop-up. It's also just an additional cost, and truck campers are not cheap. You can be anywhere in the range of $5,000 to, I don't know, $30,000 or $40,000 for a truck camper. So this is something you should consider as well. Even though truck campers are amazing and make it super nice for kind of longer road trips and living out of your vehicle more permanently, they do come with that significant increased cost. Trucks don't usually come with truck campers built in, so something to consider as well. Those were some of the pros to why you might want to use a truck for overlanding. The biggest, of course, just being the truck bed and how much potential there is and how many possibilities there are for what you want to do with all of that space. Now I want to transition over to some of the cons to owning a truck for overlanding and why you might not want to pick a truck. Starting off, there is typically a lot less interior space with trucks. Now this totally depends on if you get an access cab or kind of a standard cab. There are a lot of different varieties and options with your truck, but typically compared to SUVs, there is just a lot less space. Now this might be a problem for a couple of reasons. A couple things you might want to think about. Do you have a family? Do you have kids or pets? Do you need those extra seats? Some of the trucks, like the access cabs, don't really have seats in the back. They have little jump seats almost, but they're just not that comfortable for sitting in, especially for longer road trips. So how many people are you going to be overlanding with, and do you need those extra seats or that extra space? Another thing you might want to think about is if you have any expensive gear, camera gear, or whatever it might be. I personally love having an SUV because I can lock up my camera gear on the inside. Definitely with a truck though, you have a lot less interior space. You can get things like a truck camper or a canopy like I talked about, but these are an additional cost and they're definitely not cheap. Even things like a truck canopy can be $1,000 to $4,000 or even more depending on the brand and kind of style you go with. So if interior space is a priority from the get-go, choosing an SUV might be something you want to consider if you're not looking at spending a lot more money on a canopy or camper or something like that. Now the second thing with trucks is sometimes to get more interior space, you sacrifice the bed length. So with Toyota Tacomas, for example, you can get the double cab Tacoma, so you have kind of a traditional second row seating and a little bit more interior space. But lots of times when you go this route, you also sacrifice the bed, and your 6-foot bed now turns into a 5-foot bed, which gives you a lot less space if you want to sleep in the back of there. You can get a double cab long bed truck, and while this does give the interior space with the 6-foot bed, personally, I don't like these trucks. They have a lot longer wheelbase, and I've driven both the standard length Tacomas and the double cab long bed Tacomas, and the double cab long beds drive a lot longer. That extra length really does make a difference on the trails, and especially around the city. Personally, like I said, I've driven both of them and I can really tell a difference. It feels like a lot longer truck. So these are all sacrifices that you're gonna have to make depending on which one you go with. Now with trucks, especially if you throw on a truck camper, you might get a little bit less maneuverability and just the ability to go down tighter trails. You know, once you throw a truck camper on there, this can greatly increase the size of your truck and the height of your truck. Depending on the trails you're looking to drive down, sometimes an SUV might be the better pick because they are a little bit more compact, kind of just one unit versus the truck with this big camper on the back that sticks way up. So again, this really just depends on your needs, but sometimes When you have a big truck like that, it's just going to increase the size and make it a little bit harder for tighter trails. Again, this all just depends on what you're looking to do. Another downside to owning a truck, and I've talked about this a little bit already, but typically when you buy a truck, it doesn't come with a canopy on the back, just the open truck beds. If you're looking to store gear or keep anything dry without having a canopy, you might not have that much interior space to do so. So when you first buy a truck, you might also have to invest in a canopy, especially if you're looking to camp in the back of your truck. While you can just kind of camp outside, if you're looking to camp in any colder weather or rain, snow, anything like that, you're probably going to need to invest in a canopy or a truck camper. And like I said, these come with an additional cost. So now when you're getting your truck, you not only have the cost of the truck itself, but the canopy or camper as well. Now that we've discussed some pros and cons to owning a truck for overlanding, I want to talk a little bit about camping in the back of a truck specifically. Now, of course, with a truck, if you have a 6 foot or longer bed, even 5 foot, it's just not as comfortable. You can camp right in the back. If you don't want to be completely exposed, you might need to invest in a canopy to do so, but you do have that ability to camp right in the back of your truck. You also have the potential to throw a rooftop tent on the back. You can get kind of a bed rack for your truck and put a rooftop tent on top of that. That is another popular option. And then of course, you can also invest in a truck camper or some type of hybrid truck camper like a GFC. These are kind of the three main ways that you can use a truck for camping. Camping right in the back, camping with a rooftop tent, or a truck camper. So with a truck, you get a couple great options for camping in the back of it. So now that we've discussed trucks for overlanding, some of their pros and cons, and the ability for camping in trucks, we're gonna switch over and start discussing SUVs. And I can talk a lot more about this because I've owned an SUV for the past 2 years and used it on a lot of overlanding adventures. Now, typically SUVs are pretty similar to trucks because they usually come with a lot of ground clearance and the option for four-wheel drive. The main difference, however, is that they're kind of all enclosed and more one compact unit. While this isn't always true, sometimes SUVs do come with some more interior features and are just a little bit more luxurious on the inside when compared to trucks. For example, if you compare the Sequoias to the Tundras, these are two very similar models. The only real difference is that one's an SUV and one is a truck. The Sequoias have a lot more interior features, heated seats, sunroofs, fold-in mirrors. They just come with a lot of additional features that the Tundras don't get. Of course, this isn't always true. There are still some very nice trucks out there, but sometimes, like with the Sequoias and Tundras, the SUVs do have a little bit more interior features and some nicer features compared to trucks because they are designed more for families and road trips, whereas trucks are kind of built more for working vehicles. Now let's start off by talking about some of the pros to SUVs and why you might want to pick an SUV for your overlanding vehicle. Starting off, one of the biggest reasons is all of the interior space. Using the Sequoia as an example here, when it was completely stock, I had 3 rows of seats and I could fit 8 people in this vehicle. Now this isn't necessarily something I need to do for overlanding. I typically am not bringing 8 people with me on my overlanding adventures, but what it does show is that there is a lot of space on the inside of the Sequoia, which is great because it's given me the ability to build drawers for the Sequoia, the ability to sleep in the back of the Sequoia, and it just makes it more comfortable for off-roading and longer road trips. If you have a family, kids, or pets that you're looking to bring overlanding as well, with an SUV or something like the Sequoia, you have a lot of room in the rear seats as well. So your passengers that are sitting in the back aren't super crammed in there and they can have an enjoyable time as well. Along with all of the interior space, SUVs typically have pretty great off-road capability from the factory. While SUVs might not always be quite as capable as trucks from the factory, lots of times they still do have a lot of ground clearance and the option for four-wheel drive, which are two great qualities to have for an overlanding vehicle. Another pro to an SUV versus a truck, this isn't always true and I kind of touched on this already, is just comfort. I'd argue that SUVs typically are going to have more features and be more comfortable vehicles for overlanding compared to trucks, since they are kind of designed more for families, road trips, and just overall comfort. Lots of times trucks are designed more for work vehicles and kind of just don't have all of the same features that SUVs might. So if comfort is one of your priorities, you might want to look into SUVs. Looking at some of the old Land Cruisers or GX470s as an example of this, if you have never been on the inside of a 20-year-old Land Cruiser or a 20-year-old Lexus GX470, check it out. These things are so nice on the inside. I've been on the inside of both of them and driven both of these vehicles, and these SUVs are amazing. They're so comfortable, they're so smooth. I just don't think trucks have quite that same level of comfort and quality that some of the SUVs do. Maneuverability is another pro to owning an SUV. Lots of times SUVs are kind of more compact, sometimes they are shorter than trucks, and when you're out on the trail, in case you ever need to turn around or the trail is getting tight, sometimes an SUV just might be a better pick. Lots of times they have a shorter wheelbase, which means a better turn radius. This really isn't that big of a deal, but a little advantage that SUVs have over trucks. This goes along with interior space, but this is another big pro to an SUV. It's just having an enclosed space from the factory. With the Sequoia, I can just take all of my gear, whether that's camera equipment, backpacks, clothes, sleeping bags, and just throw it right in the Sequoia, lock it up, and know that it's going to be protected from things like rain, dirt, and snow. Being in an enclosed space, you also have the ability to really easily build some type of drawers. Drawer systems are very popular for overlanding because it gives you the ability to cook and just store some of your gear and equipment in the back. With an SUV, you have that enclosed space that is always going to be protected from the elements, and it makes it really easy to build a drawer system and put it right in the back, and just leave it in the back of your SUV. So interior space, off-road capability, and just having an enclosed, lockable space, I'd say are some of the biggest pros to owning a SUV versus a truck. Now let's go ahead and talk about some of the cons to owning an SUV compared to a truck for overlanding. With an SUV, not getting that truck bed also means that you can't ever throw a truck camper on there. So I don't think SUVs are always going to be set up quite as well to live out of them or for longer road trips, especially compared to trucks with a truck camper. So SUVs are great and I love them, but I would say that trucks, especially with truck campers, are just going to be set up a lot better for longer overlanding trips. The Sequoia is great and I absolutely love having an SUV for overlanding, but I also feel like it's more of a 3 to 4 day trip vehicle compared to a truck with a truck camper where, I mean, you could go and live out of this thing for 3 or 4 weeks. Now, obviously you still can take the Sequoia on longer trips, you still can take SUVs on longer trips, but I feel like SUVs just aren't quite set up as well for longer trips and living out of them compared to trucks. One other downside to SUVs is you might potentially need to do some more modifications to make it more off-road capable. The Sequoia is great, it comes with 4-wheel drive and has a ton of ground clearance from the factory, but not all SUVs are set up this way. Some SUVs just don't have quite as much ground clearance, and you might need to invest in things like lift kits to make them more off-road capable. So not having a truck bed, not being able to throw a truck camper on there, and the potential for needing some more modifications and the additional cost of that, I'd say are some of the biggest cons to an SUV for overlanding. Now I want to talk more specifically about camping in an SUV and some of the options that you have for this. With SUVs, you can typically camp right in the back as soon as you get them. You don't have the additional cost of a canopy or camper like you might with a truck. So an SUV is great if you're looking for something you can camp in right away. I love the Sequoia. I was able to camp in this very quickly. Just built a simple drawer kind of platform, and it was perfect for camping and taking out on an overlanding trip. So SUVs are great. They're that enclosed space, you're protected from the elements, and it's really easy to sleep in the back, especially because SUVs typically have all of that interior space. I think I have about 7 feet in the back of the Sequoia once I kind of fold the seats down, and that is very nice for camping. I never feel like I'm crammed in the back of there. One thing I also really love about camping directly in the back of an SUV, in case there's ever an emergency or you need to leave your location quickly, you can climb directly from the back to the front seats, start your vehicle, and drive off without ever having to get outside. Is this a really big issue? Not necessarily, but for some reason for me, it makes me feel a lot more comfortable knowing that I can start the vehicle and drive off without ever having to go outside. So that's also one of the things I love about having an SUV. SUVs also have a lot of space on the top of the vehicle. I recently added a Sherpa rack to my Sequoia. I have a video on this on my channel. I think SUVs are a little bit better set up for rooftop tents compared to trucks. There is so much roof space up there, especially wedge style rooftop tents, which are awesome. They set up quickly and they're super low profile. They're typically a little bit longer, and I feel like they just kind of fit on SUVs on a roof rack like the Sequoia Strip Rack here a little bit better than trucks. Truck beds, especially the shorter ones, don't always have the space for a longer rooftop tent. They kind of stick off the end of the vehicle, extend the length, and just in my opinion are a little bit awkward. So I feel like SUVs are a little bit better set up for a rooftop tent. So this is another way that you can camp if you're overlanding in the SUV, is with a rooftop tent. Of course, this is an additional cost, but something you might want to look into. With an SUV, like I talked about, you don't really have the option to throw a truck camper or something like that on here. You can tow a trailer, but you could do that with a truck as well. So I'd say the biggest ways for camping in the SUV are either a rooftop tent, camping in the back of the vehicle, or just camping in the traditional ground tent. Now that we've discussed some of the pros and cons to owning both a truck and an SUV for overlanding, I want to talk about some of the key considerations that you might want to make to hopefully help narrow down your decision to figure out which vehicle is going to be a better fit for you. Starting off, the number of passengers. Do you have a family? Do you have pets? Do you have kids? How many people are going to be coming with you on your overlanding adventures? An SUV is going to be set up a lot better for more people. It's going to be a lot more comfortable for any of the passengers that are riding in the back seat, especially compared to a truck. So ask yourself and consider how many people are going to be coming with you on your overlanding adventures. Second of all, ask yourself about the amount of gear and the type of gear that you own. If you have bigger objects like dirt bikes, skis, or kayaks, a truck might be a better fit because it's going to have that truck bed, which is going to be a lot easier to put that gear in compared to an SUV. An SUV is going to have more interior space and feels a little bit safer for locking expensive equipment, so consider the type of gear that you own. Third of all, consider the duration of your trips and how long you want to go overlanding. Are you just wanting to do little weekend off-roading adventures, or are you wanting to go out on 2 to 3 week trips, traveling to remote areas and living out of your vehicle? All depends on your personal needs, but it's going to influence whether or not a truck or an SUV is going to be better for you. Another consideration is your trip frequency. With an SUV and a drawer system, and this could apply to a truck as well if you have a drawer system with a canopy, but I personally love to leave lots of my camping equipment in the SUV. That makes it a lot easier to get out on adventures because it just makes for a lot less packing. So how long are your trips and how frequent are your trips are a couple things that you might want to think about. Initial costs are another very important thing to consider because, like I talked about with the truck especially, you might have to spend a little bit more money to get it ready for overlanding. Lots of trucks don't come with a canopy, and they definitely don't come with a truck camper, so these are things that are going to be expensive and things that you might have to invest in to get your truck to a point where it's ready for overlanding. And then the last key factor, the last thing you might want to think about is this going to be your daily driven vehicle? I daily drive the Sequoia, and while it is a big vehicle, it works fine. However, I would definitely not want to daily drive a truck with a big truck camper. Around the city especially, it's just very awkward. That is just a very big vehicle compared to kind of a compact SUV. Is this vehicle going to be something you're using just strictly for overlanding, or something that you're also going to be driving around the city as well and daily driving? All right, well, that pretty much wraps it up for this video. I really hope this was helpful and gives you guys a better idea of whether or not you want to go with a truck or an SUV. There is really no wrong choice here. Trucks and SUVs both are absolutely great for overlanding. I'd say my biggest piece of advice for you guys is to look at your specific situation. Think about your priorities, think about what's important, and this will hopefully help to figure out which vehicle is going to be a better fit for you. So review some of those key factors, review some of those things I talked about, and hopefully that will help kind of narrow you down and make your decision. I know this is a very overwhelming pick, and I certainly have times where I feel like I wish I would have gone with a truck, but there are also plenty of days where I love the Sequoia and I love having an SUV. There is never going to be a perfect vehicle. It's really important to remember that, but there are definitely vehicles that are going to better fit your needs. So take some time, consider your priorities, consider your situation, and hopefully this video will help you guys narrow down which vehicle, truck, or an SUV might be a better fit for you. So I hope this video was helpful. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support really does help me out, and I really do appreciate it. I hope you guys are enjoying this Overland Guide series. If you have any ideas, or if there's any specific topics you guys want me to cover, feel free to drop them in the comment section below, or you can send me a message on Instagram. My Instagram is Max A. Peter. years. So thank you so much for tuning in to this second part in Overland Guide, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.